This is Doug Greenwald, new voice of the Winnipeg Goldeyes. I'm excited to bring you all the action all season on 93.7 CJNU. It's time for Inside Pitch. And a man who had a lot of pitches over the fence last year, Winnipeg Goldeyes outfielder Max Murphy. He'll be our guest after the break. We'll talk about his breakthrough season last year, tying a Goldeyes record for a single season mark in homers with 31. Opening night will be here soon, May 11th at Gary, and the home opener May 19th at Shaw Park. Again after the break, Max Murphy, Goldeyes outfielder. And welcome back on CJNU 93.7. Doug Greenwald, radio voice of the Winnipeg Goldeyes. I'm joined by the Player of the Year in the American Association from a season ago, Max Murphy. And Max, thanks for joining us. So I know you get to Winnipeg a little bit in the winter time, and you also have your winter in Minnesota. So let's catch everybody up on what the Player of the Year has been doing this winter.
Well, it's been a lot of rehab. Started out as mostly rehab, and then once I was able to walk around fine, I kind of just went back to doing baseball lessons. That's usually what I do in the off season, just lessons and training.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to start off on a negative note, but I guess I will be. Let's go back to that. The Goldeyes getting to the playoffs last year, and the first game of the divisional series against Fargo Moorhead, and here you are. You've played in every game as a Goldeye, all 100 regular season games. You got a streak going back to the year before, 199 overall. You've been to the playoffs quite a bit as a professional baseball player. And is it one of those you wake up the next morning and you're thinking, not only is this going to be rehab, but how is this happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in the moment. It was just trying to figure out what the protocol was for the whole surgery, and then when I was going to leave, and then what I was going to be able to do, and kind of just doing a lot of research and asking a lot of questions on what the future really held for me.
So this winter, you mentioned baseball lessons and a lot of rehab. Explain the rehab one has to do to get back from a tibia and a fibula issue.
So actually, I put a rod down through my tibia, the bigger bone. So it's a rod. It goes down the entire length of that bone on the inside of the bone. So actually, once they put that in, it's very stable. So from there, then it's from the surgery. First thing I had to do was really regain the mobility in my ankle and my knee, because those could not bend or move really at all after the surgery. And then it's just doing everything I could to try and keep strength in it while the bone healed, because I couldn't really walk on it. So there's a lot of that. And then once it started feeling good, it was just slowly pushing it and see what I could do until I got back to kind of normal form.
And yeah, let's hope that normal form starts in, hard to believe, a little bit, about another 6 weeks or so, but you feel you're back up to, I guess there's the old expression, nobody's ever 100%, and you can't really mark a percent. Nobody knows what 80% really means, but if you feel like you could play right now if the season started?
Yeah, I could play right now. I'm able to run again. I can sprint. I can hit. I can throw. I can do everything. It's just going to be seeing how just the normal wear and tear from the season, how the leg handles it.
Yeah, and of course the season does get underway officially on May 11th in Gary. We'll have a few exhibition games before that, and you can hear all the action on 93.7 CJNU. I'm joined by Max Murphy of the Winnipeg Goldeyes. So American Association Player of the Year, 308 average, 31 homers, 97 runs batted in. So 31 homers for you in 2022 after having 13 the year before. What really seemed to click last year for you?
I think it was a few things. I think it was playing in Winnipeg. It's a more hitter friendly park than Jackson the year before. Jackson has a big wall it's a normal sized field, and then for whatever reason they decided to build a wall around a normal sized field. So, I had a lot of doubles that I thought should have been home runs the year before, and then I think it was just a better situation being at home, being in Winnipeg. I just felt more rested and more recovered throughout the season.
Yeah, as you should, having started all 100 games, and I mentioned that last year. So you tie the Goldeyes all-time single season home run record with a guy you played with the year before, and Kyle Martin, both of you sharing 31 round trippers. So when you got to home run 31, did he reach out to you?
Yeah, I think he reached out to me when I was at 30 actually, and yeah, I was really hoping to pass it. I think I had the last 3 or 4 games, but didn't end up happening. So that's okay. 31's still a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can try and pass him again this season. So you mentioned this season you're coming back. I'm not going to go over all the guys who are coming back, but we can touch on a few of them. Just talk a little bit about what they bring to the table, and have you been in contact with any of them over the offseason?
I've been in contact. I've actually been more in contact with some of the guys that decided not to come back. But it looks like we're getting a lot of starting pitching back, which is good. I feel like this league you need starting pitching. You can get by with not having a lot of good hitters and having an okay bullpen if you have starting pitchers. I think that's the most important thing in this league, and we're returning our best starting pitchers, and so that helps us a lot.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and of course, one guy who's going to be new to the team, but certainly not new to the league, is your new manager, and Greg Tagert. And I know you and Greg have been in contact, and he was certainly. I know he reached out to you immediately to try to get you to come back. How well do you know Greg? Because I know you were new to the league, about 3-4 years ago while you were with St. Paul. Of course, he was in Gary forever, so you played against him there. How well did you know him as an opponent, or just in general, how well do you know him?
Well, until he became our manager, hadn't really ever talked to him. I was just playing against him for the 2 or 3 seasons that I played against him, and so we played against him quite a bit. I played against him in playoffs in 2018. So he'd see me play a lot, and I'd done pretty well against him. So I think that helped a lot too.
Well, I think he knows how much you mean to the Goldeyes and to Winnipeg. And you mentioned being more comfortable in Winnipeg, and you brought up a good point because that's right. 2021, you still couldn't play all your games in Winnipeg, and I know you had to play part of the year down in Jackson, Tennessee. So yeah, I guess completely. I've not been either place for a game, I admit, but I guess that would be quite a difference. But you mentioned, or we talked about American Association Player of the Year. Was that your first Player of the Year at any level, whether it be high school or at Bradley or anywhere else in the minor leagues?
No, my first year when I got drafted by the Twins, I won Player of the Year in the Appalachian League. So one other time.
Okay, down in Elizabethton, I guess that's where
Yep.
it starts for most Twins. So we talked about your season a year ago, and not just individually, but obviously the team did make it to the playoffs. So what seemed to click, like maybe a month into the season, to say, hey, we got a good chance to get into postseason?
Well, I think the whole time we knew we had a good team. I actually, personally, I think we underperformed. I think we could have done better, especially with the guys we had. But the league was pretty loaded last year. A lot of the playoff teams had really good players. I mean, we obviously Fargo and Kansas City were both in our division, and both those teams were probably the 2 best teams I've ever seen in this league. So it was a tall task, but I mean, we made it, and I think we had a shot, and things kind of ended early for me, so just didn't go our way.
Yeah, and I guess I know it's a team game, but you certainly did carry the team quite a bit last season. So you mentioned Fargo and Kansas City and some of those places. What a lot of people ask about the travel in the league, and it's rough. I mean, no one's going to lie about that. I mean, obviously Winnipeg's the furthest north team. You got to cross the border each time. So you've been on a lot of buses in the minor leagues. It's not just Winnipeg, but I mean St. Paul's pretty far north, and certainly your time in the D-backs or twin system. So what's Max Murphy do on a long bus ride to try and keep it going a little faster?
I mean, we'll usually play some cards for the beginning portion of it, and then I'll usually lay down on the. It depends on the bus we have. Usually, we have a sleeper. Last year, we had some bus issues and ended up not having a sleeper for the majority of the season. So it's kind of just bringing a little foam mattress and laying on the ground and trying to sleep. And I think it's probably after the first road trip. It takes one road trip to get used to it, and then after that, once it's nighttime, I just fall asleep.
Well, I will say the schedule looks favorable in terms of the getaway days because there's a lot of getaway days that are day games. So at least you get out of there at, obviously after the game, maybe an hour and a half after the game, and you get on to the next city. So that's definitely an advantage. You also last year pitched a little bit, 7 games, struck out 6. I like that note. Struck out 6 over those 7 games. So I'm guessing that no position player wants to pitch a lot because usually that means the game's out of hand in a negative way. But did you pitch at all in high school or at Bradley?
Yeah, I pitched in high school, and initially when Bradley was recruiting me, they wanted me to be a two-way, and I said no. I just want to hit. At that point in my career, I hadn't really figured out the whole arm care thing, and pitching in high school had kind of really worn me down, and I was a better hitter. So I was like, I'm just going to hit. And then I got the chance in 2021 to, kind of be the slop guy that just comes in and pitches when we need someone besides a pitcher to pitch. And I was pretty good at it. I was able to throw strikes, and it was just fun for me. So it's just been a lot of fun.
You mentioned, let's go back to Jackson, where I know Winnipeg had to play part of the year. When you were in the Diamondback system, is that where you played your Double-A with the D-backs, or were you Double-A with the Twins?
I played Double-A for the D-backs for like a week and a half, and it was in Jackson. And I played in Jackson against Jackson when I was Double-A with the Twins.
So that was what, Chattanooga or Pensacola?
Chattanooga, yep.
Yeah,
Chattanooga.
I know the Twins had gone to eventually move to Pensacola for Double-A. Okay, so you've been a two-way Jackson player, I guess, with the Goldeyes and also with the D-backs. Shane, again, I'm Doug Greenwald, hosting tonight on CJNU, and Max. So, American Association Player of the Year. Where were you when you were told of that, and who presented you with that honor?
I think I'm pretty sure I was in the hospital still, and I think I just got a bunch of texts and stuff, and I mean, it was cool, but I wasn't really thinking about that at the moment. I think it was before my surgery still, so I was kind of just waiting to get in and see. I mean, I never had a surgery before, so it's a little nervous and didn't really know what to expect, but it all went fine.
One of 4 Goldeyes to be named either Northern League / American Association Player of the Year. Terry Lee won it twice back in the early days of the Northern League. Sean Hearn, Josh Rominski, and then of course Max Murphy. So is the trophy? What's the trophy look like?
Oh, we didn't get a trophy. I didn't get a trophy. I got a trophy for winning the Goldeyes one, but then I think the Player of the Year is just an honor. There's something you get. You don't really get a trophy, which is fine with me. I don't need more stuff.
Just a pat on the back, a couple texts, and guys calling to congratulate you, I guess, is what that honor means. So playing in Winnipeg, and again, a portion of 2020 when the games were literally in Winnipeg, and then you got to really experience it as a home Goldeye last year. But you were up there as a member of the St. Paul Saints, so I mean, being in Winnipeg was really, you're no stranger to being up there. As a visitor, what were some of the things you remember about playing in Winnipeg? And now as a home player, plus you're up there in the winter a little bit, what it means to be a Goldeye and what the fans are like and what a nice, midsummer night is up there at Shaw Park.
Yeah, well, the weather is great. Pretty much anywhere up in the north, the summers are great. Doesn't get super hot, but it's not cold. Obviously, it's like perfect temperature, beautiful nights. I mean, it's a really nice field. They get a lot of fans, and I could always see the ball really well out in this field. So at this point in my career, I want to play in front of fans. So I don't want to play somewhere where no one's going, and I want to play somewhere where I see the ball well. And so Winnipeg's the best place for that.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the ball flies a little bit there, and again, I'll have to learn a little bit about the dimensions and the way. But for our listeners, the ball flying more out to left field, or is it really good to all fields the way the ball carries?
It carries out to right really well.
Okay, well, it'll be good to know. And again, the home season will start coming up on May 19th, and we mentioned the regular season overall on the road will start on May 11th. Against Gary. And of course, we already talked about Greg Tagert, the new manager. So you mentioned the nights in Winnipeg during the summer and playing for as a visitor there. You played for St. Paul, and you look at the history of the Northern League / American Association. St. Paul and Winnipeg and Sioux Falls and Fargo were really the trendsetters in that league. How cool was it to be though? A St. Paul Saint. I mean, it's your home state. I know you played the twin system, but I mean the Saints were really, as they say, some of the pioneers of any ball and some of the gimmicks that they had there.
Playing for the Saints was awesome. I'm really, really happy I got a chance to play there. I mean, I grew up in the Twin Cities. I grew up 20 minutes away from the field. And obviously I knew of the Saints. I had only gone to a few games. And then when I actually went and played there, just seeing how many fans they had, I mean, it's like one of the nicest fields I'd ever played on. And it's right by home. It was just a really cool experience. I mean, all kinds of high school buddies that I had that had never seen me play since high school were able to come out to games. My parents would come anytime they wanted. It was a good setup there.
Yeah, and of course now they're AAA for the Twins, and you've seen it change a little bit in the American Association where you have now two teams in the Milwaukee area, and you got the team down in Fort Worth, the Cleveland Railroaders. But no, it is that you certainly have been with the state or we'll say the original franchises. Talk about spring training coming up, and I know spring training is going on right now for the major league teams, and that's really a 6-week thing. What goes on at spring training with an independent league team?
So it's really short. It's probably a week and a half at the most. So you have to be ready to go when you get there. And the season starts much later than every other league. So you should be ready when you get there. And it's it'll be different with Greg because he'll have his own thing he wants to do. But typically it's just straight into it. Pitchers are throwing as soon as they can to get built up because you only have a week to do it. And then hitters are seeing pitchers right away to get right into seeing live pitching. And then besides that, it's just the little things that at this point pretty much everyone knows, like little bunt plays, rundowns, like just small things like that. But it's mostly just getting the pitchers ready to face hitters and the hitters ready to face pitching.
And you're going to obviously meet a lot of new teammates this year, and you've been through it. And of course, we want to see you and all the players get back into organized baseball and hopefully get a chance to get to the big leagues. But there's going to be some players that are going to be, for the first time in their pro career, not attached to a major league affiliate. You as a veteran player, you maybe take a younger player aside and say, hey, you're still playing pro ball and there's still going to be scouts looking at you and you still have a chance to get that dream. Is there a bit of Max Murphy now? I don't see any gray hair yet, but what I mean by that is more of the grizzled vet that might take that young kid aside and say, hey, the dream's not over yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you're young in this league, you still got a chance to play affiliated if that's what you're trying to do. But I think it's more you have to, especially if you played affiliated, you have to accept the fact that there's a very good possibility, actually, there's a better possibility that you'll never play affiliated again. So you're here to win. And if you play the right way, you play to win and you show what you can do, you do have a chance. And you have a chance more than just affiliated. You have a chance at the Mexican League. You get a chance overseas. You can get chances everywhere. There's guys that have played in this league for 4 or 5 seasons and then gone and made a good living playing baseball somewhere else that's not affiliated.
Yeah, it's the thing about the independent leagues where there is not, you don't have necessarily a farm director to say, to the manager, hey, we need to see this guy batting third or pull this guy after 6 innings or anything like that. So it's obviously a big difference there. Well, Max, as I said, look forward to working with you. Most importantly, glad you're healthy and look forward to seeing you hit 32 home runs this year and bring Winnipeg a championship. But finish the offseason strong, and we'll see you in about another month.
Sounds good. Thanks, Doug.
All right, Max Murphy, Winnipeg Goldeyes American Association Player of the Year from 2022. I'll be back with more in just a moment. You're listening to Winnipeg Goldeyes Talk on 93.7 CJNU. And welcome back to Winnipeg Goldeyes, our midwinter talk with the new manager, and that's Greg Tagert. I say new manager, but you've been in this league forever. I mean, 16 years in Gary, Indiana, and whether it be the Northern League or American Association. So you went to the Giants last year as a minor league manager in Arizona. And I know that's where guys want to be. I mean, generally players, that's their goal. I mean, to get into affiliated ball, to get to the big leagues, there's no doubt about it. And I know that you enjoyed the summer league, but when Sam Cates called you, you said, I better take this call.
Yes, Doug, you hit it right on the head. And I better take the call. And as I've told some people, I actually thought the call was in regards to some people that were inquiring about the open Goldeyes job. And I thought I might have a few former coaches of mine who had reached out to Sam, and he was probably calling to get a recommendation. And as Sam will tell you, he told me to, if I had a moment, and he said he'd like to discuss possibility of me coming to Winnipeg. And I was floored, certainly very honored. And at the time, as I've said, I really that weekend said, no, I had a wonderful tenure in Gary and is well documented. I lived there for about 10 years in Northwest Indiana. It was a home and had no inclination to return to the independent side. And for my reasons, unlike most players that look to get to, my ambition was not to move to affiliated baseball. And Doug, my thought process over the years is, affiliated, independent, working in the game I love is the most important thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned Winnipeg, and you're no stranger to visiting Winnipeg. I mean, I talked about this with Max Murphy, the Goldeyes outfielder, and we'll talk about Max in a moment. But I mean, Gary and Winnipeg and Sioux Falls, Sioux City, places like that. I mean, that's kind of the roots of the Northern League / American Association. So all the years that you were in Gary, the 15 or so years, Winnipeg was a common stop for you. As a visitor, what was your favorite part about going to Winnipeg?
Well, absolutely. And Doug, going back in some of those years, it would be 2 to 3 stops a year, in Winnipeg, and depending on how the schedule was made. And because we were in that same division when it split into 2 divisions. So the Goldeyes and the Railcats were division partners until the change last year, which I was not a part of when they changed the divisions over with the new team in the Milwaukee area. But, aside, and again, we talked about it yesterday, Doug, the bus travel, all those things gets talked about so much, in terms of not in a positive way. you just accept that as part of it. It's part of the experience. But the Winnipeg stop was always a favorite of mine. You know, we were always so treated well there with the Railcat players, myself, and I'm sure as they do with every club that comes in. But I always felt a nice connection, to Winnipeg, and certainly the people, Sam, Andrew, all the people associated with the Goldeyes, including the fan base, always felt very much at home there when we'd come in. A tough place to play, and I'm hoping that continues as well.
Yeah, and we'll get back to what you're just talking about in a moment about the hospitality. But one of the reasons it's tough is you're going to inherit probably 8-9 players from last year's team, but you're bringing back the American Association Player of the Year and Max Murphy, who told me he's healthy. He said that the season started today. He'd be good to go. He's been getting his tibia and fibula healthy after that collision last year. 31 homers for Murphy a season ago for the standout outfielder, 97 RBIs. And you've been in the league a long time, and he's been in the league for about 4 years now. But what do you know about Max having to manage against him? And I know you don't know him that well, but what do you think it'll be like for you to manage him?
Well, certainly the priority when getting the job, and there's always going to be movement, just the nature of independent baseball and the nature of the players moving on for various reasons. But Max has some strong ties to the Winnipeg area after having played there the last couple of years. And when I first saw him in St. Paul a few years back, it was evident that there's a nice looking player. I mean, and you mentioned the 31 homers. The power has grown like it has with a lot of players over years. As they get a little older and they advance the swing, you become more comfortable in the competitive environment they're in. But always a nice outfielder. I mean, this is far from a one-dimensional player. He has a lot of other things. He's added the power to his game, but it was a high priority, and I know very welcome news not only to Goldeyes fans, but certainly to the new manager that we were able to get him agreed. And the most important thing, get him healthy and make sure he's okay. I did not see the collision, was not able to watch the action of the playoff game, but certainly heart goes out to Matt after the year and the Goldeyes, with it obviously had an effect on their chances as they entered the postseason last year. Rick Forney being such a good friend of mine, the former manager with the Goldeyes, I know that was a tough blow, and they did their best to try to overcome it. But a loss of a player like that was hard to take.
Yeah, no, he said says he's healthy and he's going to be ready to go come the season. So a few players you're bringing back or inheriting, but it's going to be a combination of some guys you're bringing in, and I know that not all the guys are signed yet. So you're out in Arizona right now, and what is your assignment there?
Well, we're looking at every avenue, Doug, for players. And I think that's what every manager on the independent side, especially those of us who have been involved in it for a while, and Doug, you're as aware as anybody on what's happened over the last few years with the contraction of the teams. Of course, we could mention COVID. I hope a few years from now, we don't have to worry about that, referring to the situation we're in now. But it caused a whole change in the way players are available. At this time of the year in the past, you would see dozens of players every day released from organizations. The guys from AAA, AA, single, very high quality players like Max Murphy would be available on a daily basis, throughout that last 3 weeks of March into that first week of April. That's changed dramatically with the advent of the new restrictions, the cut of clubs from the 40 affiliate clubs that no longer. So, something I've always believed in, whether it's tryout camps, we'll be attending a tryout camp in the Dallas area later on in March. We'll be, we're looking at players right now. A group of free agents from Japan are showcasing themselves in the Phoenix area. We're looking at those players. Last week, the Diamondbacks had an invite-only tryout, which consisted of many free agents from the big leagues on down. Guys that, have that kind of experience. So any resource that we can find to have players. This last week, we consummated a few trades with players that we targeted in the off season. We felt like that was a way we could strengthen our club and add to some depth. So, we're looking at every avenue. We've been contacted, and I've reached out to players who actually set out a year, to see if, when their opportunities were limited last year. So those are just all avenues that right now we're taking to really, add to the depth, add to the strength of the ball club, make up for some of the losses that the Goldeyes will have from last year's club, and try to maintain the level of play that's been there for so many years.
And you mentioned a trade, and it's one of these things where as independent league teams can, even though it's not the same league, but you can trade with other leagues, and you just acquired an infielder named Andy Armstrong, who'd been with Evansville, and he comes from one of the best college programs around in Oregon State. What can fans expect out of Andy?
Yeah, I think it's one of those trades that, we targeted a player that's got a couple years under his belt professionally, at the independent leagues, but a player that you said it best, Doug, it's not a coincidence we acquired a guy that came from a program like Oregon State. I mean, the ability to play the game, some of those things I'm very familiar with his manager in Evansville. All the reports, they had a need for young pitching. So John Vargas, who did a nice job, for the goals, that league's a little younger, a little less experienced, not quite as advanced. I think it'll be a great situation for John. And at the same time, a challenge for Andy to come into our league. And really, I want him to be the type of player he was at Oregon State. Yeah, I think sometimes, when we see a lot of these players that go undrafted as seniors that come from programs like this, they try to adapt to what they think is the pro game in terms of what somebody, an organization might be looking for. We're going to ask Andy, and I think that's what happened to him a little bit offensively. But this player's, was the everyday shortstop at Oregon State with, a guy that was the number one pick in the country, Nick Madrigal, by the White Sox. So we think we've got somebody that can really help us there.
Well, it's among signees right now, and one player I'm familiar with a little bit, Najee Gaskins. I saw him play with San Jose. So, we'll know more come May. So it's a work in progress right now. So there's 15 major league camps out in Arizona. Do you go to all the major leagues, or at least all the facilities?
I was at the backfields of the Royals and the Royals and Rangers today, the backfields of the Padres and Mariners. So, not seeing the big league games, but seeing a lot of the backfield action. And again, I'm anxious, Doug, after not being a part of it last year, I'm anxious to see the changes. Again, this used to be an annual occurrence for most of the managers on the independent side in the Northern League and the American Association to trek out here. You look at the backfields, releases happen daily. I'm not going to say you walk right up to a player and ask him to sign a contract the day, but you make a contact. These days, some clubs likely may only release a half a dozen players the entire spring training. But I think what you can do is you can put somebody out there, almost like the face, with a name type of and get yourself acclimated to some players that may become available, and really rely on the contacts of people that you're close to in some organizations.
We're with Winnipeg manager Greg Tagert previewing the season on CJNU 93.7. So you got tryouts and you got minor league spring training right now, and then when do you get to Winnipeg?
I'll be in that mid to late April time period, a little bit before the players get there. I've got to get settled in. Like I said, you spend 16, 17 years in one place. I've got a lot of belongings still in Gary, Indiana. So, I wasn't expecting to leave. I took the Giants job, somewhat late in late January, early February of 2022, and had every intention was returning as the Railcat. So, but I'll get to Winnipeg, as I've told Andrew. I'll probably travel very heavy this year, just with a lot of belongings that I'll bring up to Winnipeg, and hopefully everything will settle in real quickly.
15 years as Railcats manager, and I worked in the Frontier League, and you've been around the independent ranks for a while. Three-time Manager of the Year. You won 3 league championships with the Rail Cats. And coming to Canada, though, is nothing new for you because you've been around Canada as a visiting manager. I mean, whether it's the years you've come to Winnipeg, but, back when it was the Northern League, Calgary was in the league at one time. You've been there. You've been to Edmonton, and then Moose Jaw and Saskatoon and Brandon and Regina. So you have certainly the western part of Canada you've really chronicled.
Yeah, we were fortunate. I'll tell you what, and I do miss it. There was some crossover play at one time, so I've been to Ottawa and Quebec as well. In the early days, one of the forgotten cities was a wonderful former AA club, the Frontier League, had London, Ontario, in the league for a couple of years. Always enjoyable. The players enjoy it. It's an attractive place for the players. For many reasons. We hope it's attractive for the baseball reasons. But Canada's a wonderful place for visiting players to go. And as I said, it's always been very welcoming. And, and obviously the stadium, everything that they've done with the Goldeyes. And I think it just goes to the point of the continuity that the Goldeyes organization has had all these years from Sam on down. It's just tremendous and really, unique in this industry.
I was getting back to the hospitality because Sam, I know he was gung ho on hiring you and did a similar sales pitch with me. I guess anything that a former mayor would do to sell his city. So in a way, you have to be a salesman a little bit. You're trying to get players to come to Winnipeg. So aside from the fact they're going to play baseball, because anyone anywhere will play, signed by a team is going to play baseball. But
that's right.
Sell Winnipeg. What do you tell a player about, hey, come to Winnipeg, not just because you're going to play, but what makes Winnipeg the place to be for a player?
All you have to do in this day and age, Doug, I think the best thing you do is you direct them to some of the website. You direct them, these players are so in tune on the social media that other players become your best recruiting tool, and they really do. But they look at the market, they hear Winnipeg. It's a major league market. It is a tremendous market. You've got a downtown stadium. You've got everything that's in place. Not too dissimilar from a Sacramento, where the River Cats play. Those kind of things are all attractive, we think for the most part to players. And I think at the end of the day, players, I think what you just said, you said it best. At the end of the day, the players do put the priority on, am I going to get an opportunity there to play? And so when it comes down to that, everything else, once we get them there, I think the player comes out and says, hey, this is an incredible place to play. Whether that guy's played in the big leagues, Doug, or whether he's played in, a college baseball program like Oregon State, I would be hard pressed to believe a player isn't impressed when he shows up. And
not just that, but, and I mentioned this earlier, that Winnipeg has been a staple in that league, especially when it's come to managers, because Winnipeg's been around, the Goldeyes been around for about 30 years. And it's like the Pittsburgh Steelers of coaches. There's only been 3, there's only been 3 of head coaches there in 50 years. You're only the 4th manager in Goldeyes history. And I read an article about you that you know the legacy there, because Hal Lanier had such a great track record as a big league player, later a big league manager with Houston, and then later with the Goldeyes. And Doug Simonik has been as synonymous in the Northern League or American Association as you've been. And obviously Rick Forney, 26 years in any capacity with the Goldeyes, a player, coach, and then forever as a manager. And I know you and Rick are very close. So what has Rick been able to tell you about Winnipeg now that you'll be wearing a Goldeyes uniform?
Well, I'll tell you what, he's making sure that I'm getting good players because he doesn't want that legacy to go to Winnipeg. So he stays on me about every day. Hey, you signing guys? So that's but no, he is. I'm very aware of what the expectations, and I think the one thing that certainly I hope helps me is that we had that same type of expectation, the standard of excellence in Gary. You mentioned we have a very good friend contact in Roger Wexelberg who hired me and Gary. and that ownership group and the following ownership group with the Salvi family, the expectations, the standards that go along with things that not just what happens on the baseball field, but the entire organization. And that was very important to me, Doug. There's not a lot of places. I guess my best recruiting tool that I've said a couple times to players and anybody that'll listen is that, I thought so highly of the Winnipeg Goldeyes organization that I left the Giants job for it. And I think that is something that, hopefully a player can identify with. You mentioned Najee Gaskins, who I got to know a little bit in the Giants organization. Javion Williams, who, was in the Giants. So those players, I was able to relate directly, especially a player like Najee, who's experiencing this side for the first time in terms of, he was in the Giants organization. Now he's got to go out and be recruited into an independent environment. He's looking for the best opportunity for himself, but he doesn't know anything about Winnipeg. He doesn't know anything about the American Association. I think that's when a player like that, that you mentioned, the salesmanship, or the college recruiting type aspect falls into place.
I touched on that a little bit with Max Murphy, because Max being a veteran player, and we're talking about, Gaskins or Williams or a few other guys that are going to experience professional baseball now without a major league affiliate. And again, let's face it, the goal is to get to the big leagues. I mean, I make no secret about it, as a broadcaster, like most people, the goal is to these leagues provide opportunities, maybe get picked up again by an affiliate. But I think these guys are going to go through this for the first time and say, yeah, we're using wooden bats, and yeah, we're being paid, but there's no within the league a next step. You're not going to single A, double A necessarily. And that Max has taken some players aside, some younger players aside, and say, hey, you know what? That's true, but it's another opportunity. Or, Mexico, Japan, Korea, there's other lucrative opportunities down the line. You as a veteran skipper, do you have similar talks with players about that?
I do, Doug. And I've probably taken the mindset over the years that I want a player. I don't want a player that doesn't have an ambition to play in the major leagues. That is the ultimate goal. Now, Doug, I will say I'm very upfront and very transparent that my job and the desires of Sam as an owner and those fans that walk through those turnstiles, they only care about one thing, and that's whether the Goldeyes win that game that night. And that's really all I care about. My job is not to develop players. It is to provide an opportunity to players, like you said. And that's the best phrase of independent baseball over 30 years that it can be given. It's an opportunity league. It's not a developmental league. The guy that's making, they got the big bonus, it's the number one pick, isn't playing because of that status. He's, whoever is giving you that best opportunity to win that night. And I think over the last few years, the lines have kind of blended because, you've got players that want opportunities. They've come from organizations with an understanding of how the hierarchy worked in an organization. Well, it goes out the door when you get there on night one. And that can be a pleasant surprise for a lot of players, or it can be a rude awakening for a lot of players. With that emphasis that night is to win that game. And as you know, Doug, better than anybody, whether it's Fresno, San Jose, the priority that night is to make sure certain guys play, put in position to develop to get to the next level, as you said. Well, on night one, when we open up in Gary, there's only one objective, and that's to win that night's game.
That and learning myself that I'm going to hear "Oh Canada" every night too.
Yes.
But no, that is the thing, and people explain that I try to tell people that this is professional baseball. And the thing in the last few years that has been emphasized is I don't want to use just the term independent, because it's now a Major League Baseball partner league. That's the new term, whether it be the Atlantic League, the American Association, the Frontier League. Explain to our listeners what an MLB partner league means.
Yeah, I think from then going back to the contraction a little bit, Doug, and certainly I wouldn't be the expert on how it all came together, but I do believe the idea was, and from the commissioner on down, one umbrella of professional baseball. Now, how big that umbrella is, who knows where it'll extend. But, the Pioneer League is part of that. One of the leagues that lost, all the affiliation because it was a short season. It's a great, I don't know, marketing tool, whatever you might say, but there are some benefits that go along with it. But on the baseball field, what happens is we'll be able to follow many of the rules that MLB does. We'll be able to, promote players in a sense that it's all under that same umbrella. And I think it's good for everybody. It's good for the industry, whether it's the tech, the data, some of those things. But at the same time, one of the things I have great respect for the ownership groups in the American Association and everything that we've done over the years. I think some of those guys that have been around it a long time are not going to lose sight of what made the independent side so attractive and so good. And that's really, what I hope happens. I mean, that's my personal feelings. I would never want it just to be a feeder program to MLB. They have that. There's so many things out of it. We never want to lose that independence either.
Yeah, I think it's a good mix of both because I think it is important to have, as you say, that ambition to get to the major leagues, to have MLB name tied to that league, but as you say, still some freedom to manage and players can develop or play to win in a different way. You mentioned some major league rules. One is the 20-second pitch clock. I understand it's going to come to the American Association.
Yes, it is. I think it'll probably be a little bit of an adjustment, except for the affiliated guys that have been there the last few years. I mean, the American Association is no different than the major leagues in the sense that players have some of the idiosyncrasies that, whether it's the walk-up music or the taking the time on the mound. Doug, and you and I kind of briefly spoke about this. It's the most important people we have to be concerned about are those fans that are buying the ticket to come in. And whether it's players who might have, and even, the major league players that are having a little tough time adapting to it now for various reasons. I think everybody has, I mean, the idea is to make sure that the people that are buying the ticket, they're watching the game, they're turning on the TV, they're just engaged in this ball game from any 1 to any 9. I mean, that's and I can only speak to myself growing up and loving the game. I could turn on any game. It could be the Pirates versus the Reds, and I grew up in Northern California. I'd watch that game from start to finish. Well, that's what we want every fan to do, and whether it's the older fan, my age group, that middle-aged fan, or that younger fan who's trying, so anything that can benefit that. I will say this, Doug, it has brought a lot of interest. I've been down here in spring training now for about a week. It's brought a lot of interest, and that's good. And so that, along with the WBC here and those kind of things, but I think it could be good for the game, and hopefully, we don't take a step backwards just because there are going to be some hiccups, I think.
Yeah, there already have been a little bit, but I think it's great they're experimenting in spring training. I mean, it's spring training for everybody. That includes the clock operators, the umpires to enforce the rules, and the players to abide by them. Well, Greg, welcome to Winnipeg, and I guess people can say the same thing to me. So we're both we have a few things in common: Northern California and Giants roots, and now the Goldeyes. So definitely look forward to working.
Well, look at that.
With you, and I know I've only known you for a couple of days, but we already have a lot of people in common. But Greg, thank you very much, and finish spring training strong.
Thank you, Doug. We'll talk to you soon.
Greg Tagert, our guest, will be back with more in a moment on CJNU 93.7. That was Winnipeg Goldeyes manager Greg Tagert. We'd like to thank him for joining us here on Inside Pitch. Goldeyes ticket packages are available now by visiting goldeyes.com or calling 204-982-BASE. That's 204-982-BASE. Single game tickets go on sale March 30th. We'll see you March 29th when Inside Pitch returns on CJNU 93.7 FM. I'm Doug Greenwald, radio play-by-play voice of your Winnipeg Goldeyes. We thank you for joining us.